This money smells like diesel. That was the first thing my father said when I placed a cashier's check for $450,000 on the table. He did not say thank you. He did not apologize for gambling away the family estate. He just held up my life savings with 2 fingers, grimacing like he was holding a dirty tissue. I would rather let the bank foreclose, he sneered, than accept charity from a delivery girl. Then, he opened his fingers. The check fluttered down and landed right in the middle of his mushroom soup. As the ink blurred into the gray liquid, my mother just laughed. I did not scream. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and looked him in the eye. "Enjoy the soup, Dad," I said. "It is the most expensive meal you will ever eat." I sat in the cab of my Ford F-250, the engine idling with a low, steady rumble that vibrated through the steering wheel. It was the only sound I trusted. Outside the tinted windows, the iron gates of the Vanderbilt estate loomed like prison bars. I was not shaking anymore. The cold rage had settled into something heavier, like a stone in my gut. My name is Tessa. I am 29 years old, and I own the largest logistics fleet in the tri-state area. But to the people inside that mansion, I am just the help that shares their last name. I looked down at the passenger seat. Lying there was the document they had tried to slip under my dessert plate before the soup incident. A quitclaim deed. They had not invited me over for family bonding. They invited me because they wanted me to sign over the rights to my grandmother's cottage, the only asset left in the family that was not leveraged to the hilt. They wanted to sell it to pay the interest on their credit cards. They thought I was stupid. They thought the girl who drives a truck would not read the fine print. I threw the truck into gear and peeled away from the curb. As I drove, the memories hit me, sharp and bitter. 5 years ago, the dynamic was set in stone. My brother, Preston, was the golden child. He was sent to Zurich to get a finance degree. My parents threw him a $50,000 farewell party. They called him the future of Vanderbilt, but I saw his social media feed. While he was supposedly studying global markets, he was skiing in the Alps and popping magnum bottles of champagne on yachts. He failed 3 semesters. They covered it up. Me? I was the pack mule. While Preston was skiing, I was sleeping on a cot in a freezing warehouse in New Jersey. I started TS, logistics with 1 used box truck and a maxed-out credit card. I drove 18-hour shifts. I changed blown tires in the pouring rain on the interstate while trucks roared past me at 70 miles an hour. My hands were permanently stained with grease and diesel. When I came home for Christmas that year, exhausted and proud that I had finally turned a profit, Preston laughed. "You look like a mechanic, Tess," he had said, swirling his wine. "Do not touch the silk curtains." When Preston finally returned from Europe with a bought degree, my father named him Chief Financial Officer immediately. He was given a corner office and a 6-figure salary to do nothing but gamble on bad stocks. I was given nothing. Not a congratulations. Not a good job. Just a request to park my truck down the street so the neighbors would not see it. They blamed me for not fitting the image. But as I merged onto the highway, heading back to my warehouse, I realized the truth. They did not hate me because I was a failure. They hated me because I was the only one working. The family was broke. I knew it. Preston's incompetence had drained them dry. And they looked at me, the pack mule, and expected me to carry them up the mountain one more time. But mules have a breaking point. And this mule just learned how to kick. I pulled into the loading dock of TS. Logistics at 11:30 at night. The warehouse was alive. Forklifts beeped. Conveyor belts hummed. And the air was thick with the smell of exhaust and cardboard. To my father, this smell was poverty. To me, it was the smell of freedom. I did not go home to cry. I went to my office, locked the door, and turned on the war room monitors. I knew exactly what the Vanderbilt group was desperate for. They were betting everything on the Skyline project, a luxury high-rise that was currently just a hole in the ground. They needed $8 million to import Italian marble and structural steel to finish the frame. Without those materials, the bank would pull their construction loan, and the family would be destitute. They were looking for a savior. A white knight investor. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Vance, my corporate attorney. He answered on the first ring. "It is time," I said. "Activate Vanguard." Vanguard Holdings was my ghost, a shell company registered in Delaware, designed to be anonymous. On paper, it was a faceless investment firm. In reality, it was me. "We are moving forward with the loan offer?" Vance asked. $8 million is a lot of exposure, Tessa. "Offer them the loan," I said, staring at the shipping routes on my screen. "But that is just the bait. I do not want to own their building, Vance. I want to own their neck. I can try to buy out their shipping contracts," Vance suggested, "but the premiums will be massive." "No," I corrected him. "Do not buy the contracts. Buy the debt." This was the leverage they never saw coming. I knew, because I tracked the industry. That Vanderbilt Group had not paid their freight bills in 6 months. They owed the major shipping lines hundreds of thousands of dollars. The carriers were about to write it off as a loss. Call the shipping lines, I instructed. Offer to buy the Vanderbilt bad debt for 10 cents on the dollar. They will be happy to get anything at this point. Once Vanguard owns that debt, we own the lien rights. We legally control every single container of marble and steel sitting on those ships. Vance paused. You are going to strangle their supply chain. Amateurs strike fast, I told him, leaning back in my chair. Professionals squeeze. In the logistics business, we have a saying. You do not kill the competition. You control their oxygen. If I denied them the loan now, they might find money elsewhere. But if I gave them the loan, and then seized their materials halfway across the ocean, they would be trapped. Let them build the frame, I said, watching a container ship icon blink on the map in the middle of the Pacific. Let them spend the money, and just when they are desperate for that marble to finish the job, I will close the valve. While my lawyers were drafting the loan agreement that would serve as the trap, I went hunting for the ammunition. I did not need a hacker to break into the Vanderbilt servers. I did not need to guess passwords or rappel down an elevator shaft. In the corporate world, the biggest security flaw is never the software. It is the people you mistreat. I drove to a 24-hour diner off the Jersey Turnpike. It was the kind of place my father would not be caught dead in, smelling of burnt coffee and bacon grease. Sitting in the back booth, clutching a worn leather handbag, was Mrs. Higgins. She had been the Vanderbilt family accountant for 20 years. She was the woman who balanced their checkbooks, paid their taxes, and even reminded my father of his own anniversary. And last week, Preston had fired her via text message. He said I was asking too many questions, Mrs. Higgins said, her hands shaking as she held her coffee cup. 20 years, Tessa. And he tossed me out like I stole the silverware. I know the feeling, I said gently. I pushed a slice of cherry pie toward her. You tried to warn them, didn't you? I tried to tell your father, she whispered, looking around the empty diner. I told him the numbers did not add up. The construction budget for the Skyline project. Money was bleeding out, Tessa. But Conrad just yelled at me. He said I did not understand high finance. He said Preston was a visionary. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, silver USB drive. He locked me out of the system 5 minutes after he fired me, she said, sliding the drive across the table. But I made a backup of the real ledger the night before. I knew he was going to do it. I could see the panic in his eyes. I took the drive. It felt heavy, cold. What is on this? I asked. The truth, she said. Preston is not just bad at math, honey. He is a criminal. I plugged the drive into my laptop right there on the sticky table. I opened the folder she pointed to. My eyes widened. It was not just gambling debts. It was theft. There were a dozen wire transfers, all dated within the last 6 months. They were labeled as consulting fees or material acquisitions, but the destination routing numbers all led to the same place. A shell account in the Cayman Islands. He siphoned off exactly $520,000 from the payroll account, Mrs. Higgins explained. That is why he could not pay the shipping fees. He stole the freight money to pay off his bookies. I stared at the screen. This was not just mismanagement. This was federal wire fraud. This was embezzlement. This was a felony that carried a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. I did not know who else to give it to, Mrs. Higgins said, tears welling in her eyes. I did not want to go to the police. I did not want to hurt your mother. You did the right thing, I said, closing the laptop. You did not hurt them, Mrs. Higgins. You just gave me the shovel to bury them. I put the USB drive in my pocket. I had the debt. I had the shipping routes. And now, I had the kill shot. The Silver Gala was the kind of event where the champagne cost more than my first truck. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling of the Vanderbilt ballroom, casting a fractured light over 200 guests in tuxedos and silk gowns. It was a room full of people who pretended to like my parents because they owed them money, or because they hoped to borrow some. I was not wearing my work boots tonight. I wore a tailored white suit, sharp enough to cut glass. I stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, watching the performance. My father, Conrad, was on the stage. He looked the part of the titan he believed he was. He held a microphone in one hand and a glass of scotch in the other, beaming at the crowd. Friends, he boomed, his voice echoing off the marble walls. Rumors of our struggle have been greatly exaggerated. Tonight, I am proud to announce a new partnership that will secure the Vanderbilt legacy for another century. We have secured full funding for the Skyline project through our strategic partners at Vanguard Holdings. The crowd applauded politely. They did not care about the legacy. They just wanted to know the open bar was staying open. But I was not looking at my father. I was looking at Preston. My brother was standing to the side of the stage, and he looked like he was going to vomit. He kept checking his phone. I knew why. My forensic team had flagged a text message sent to his burner phone 3 hours ago. It was from a man named Sal. It read, "Midnight. Payment. Or pain." That was the desperation I was banking on. They had not vetted Vanguard. They had not read the fine print. They just saw a check for $8 million and grabbed it like drowning men grabbing an anchor. "And now," Conrad announced, gesturing to the heavy oak table set up on stage, "we will sign the agreement." That was my cue. I nodded to Mr. Vance. He walked out from the wings carrying a leather portfolio. The room went quiet. They did not recognize him. "Mr. Vanderbilt," Vance said, his voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "I am the legal counsel for Vanguard Holdings." "Ah, excellent." Conrad extended his hand. "Do you have the papers?" "I do," Vance said. He placed a single red folder on the table. Then he stepped back. "However, per company protocol, the chairwoman of Vanguard must be present to countersign." "Chairwoman?" Conrad frowned. "We were told this was an anonymous consortium." "It was," Vance said. He turned and pointed directly at me on the mezzanine. Until now, he did not wait for a reaction. He did not stay to watch the fireworks. Mr. Vance simply buttoned his jacket, nodded to the stunned room, and walked out the exit. He was a professional. He knew when to leave the blast zone. I walked down the grand staircase. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. The clicking of my heels on the marble was the only sound. 200 heads turned. I saw the confusion on my mother's face turn to horror. I saw Preston grip the podium until his knuckles turned white. I walked onto the stage and took the microphone from my father's limp hand. "Hello, Dad," I said. "Hello, Preston." "Tessa?" Conrad hissed, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "What is this stunt? Where is the Vanguard representative?" "You are looking at her," I said calmly. "I am Vanguard Holdings." A ripple of whispers tore through the crowd. "The delivery girl? The black sheep? You?" Preston laughed. A shrill, hysterical sound. "You drive trucks, Tessa. You do not have $8 million. "You are right," I said. "I do not have $8 million to lend you." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a remote clicker. I pointed it at the massive projection screen behind them, which was displaying the Vanderbilt family crest. Click. The crest vanished. In its place appeared a live satellite map of the Pacific Ocean. 5 red dots were blinking ominously. "I did not lend you money," I told the crowd, my voice steady. "I bought your debt." I turned to my father. "Vanderbilt Group has not paid its shipping fees in 6 months. Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, Evergreen. They were all about to sue you. So, this morning, I bought your bad debt for 10 cents on the dollar. I own your shipping contracts, Dad. And under maritime law, that gives me lien rights." I pointed to the screen. "That is your Italian marble. That is your structural steel. That is the glass for your windows. It is all sitting on my ships, in my containers. And as of 10 minutes ago, I issued a stop order. Nothing moves until I say it moves." Conrad looked like he had been punched in the gut. That is extortion. "We have a contract. You cannot just stop our supply chain." "Actually, I can," I said. I walked over to the table and flipped open the red folder Vance had left. "Because you did not read the fine print. Clause 14.2. I recited from memory. The cross-default provision. It states that if any director of the borrowing entity is found to be engaged in financial fraud, the lender has the right to recall the loan immediately and seize the collateral." "Fraud?" Conrad sputtered. "How dare you? My company is impeccable." "Your company might be," I said, "but your chief financial officer is not." I reached into my blazer and pulled out the file Mrs. Higgins had given me. I did not hand it to him. I held it up for the front row to see. "This contains wire transfers from the Vanderbilt payroll account to a shell company in the Caymans," I said. $520,000, stolen by Preston Vanderbilt to pay off illegal gambling debts. The silence in the room broke. Gasps. Murmurs. Phones coming out to record. I looked at Preston. He was not arrogant anymore. He was weeping, shaking his head, mouthing, "No, no, no." "Preston committed federal wire fraud," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "Which violates Clause 14.2. Which voids the deal." I slammed the folder shut. "I am recalling the debt, Dad. I am seizing the collateral." I looked around the glittering ballroom. "This house. I am foreclosing on this house." 10 minutes later, we were in the VIP green room behind the stage. The applause outside had died, replaced by the murmurs of a confused crowd exiting the building. My mother, Sylvia, was crying on the velvet sofa. It was not a sad cry. It was a terrified cry. "Tessa, please," she sobbed, clutching her pearls. "We are family. You cannot humiliate us like this." What will the neighbors think? The neighbors will not be thinking about you much longer, Mom, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Because you will not be living here. Conrad was pacing, his face purple. I will sue you. I will tie this up in court for 10 years. You could, I agreed. But discovery works both ways, Dad. If we go to court, Preston's bank records become public record. The Federal Bureau of Investigation tends to frown on wire fraud. I tossed a single document onto the coffee table. This is a deed in lieu of foreclosure, I said. It is a very simple trade. You sign the deed to the Vanderbilt estate over to me. Voluntarily. Right now. In exchange, I agree not to forward Mrs. Higgins' evidence to the federal authorities. Preston looked up from his hands. You would let me go? I do not care about you, Preston, I said coldly. I just want what I paid for. I paid for this house with my silence for 20 years. Now, I want the receipt. I checked my watch. You have 5 minutes. Sign the deed and move into a condo. Or do not sign, and Preston spends the next 10 years making license plates. Conrad looked at his son. He looked at the document. He looked at the life he had built on a foundation of lies. His hand shook as he took the pen. He signed. I picked up the deed. The ink was still wet. You have 24 hours to vacate, I said. Take your clothes. Leave the furniture. And Dad? I paused at the door. Do not forget the soup. I did not just take the house. I took the narrative. The fallout was swift and mathematical. With the Skyline project stalled and their reputation shattered at the gala, the Vanderbilt group filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 30 days later. The court-appointed trustee liquidated everything. The luxury cars, the art collection, the summer home in the Hamptons. Sold off to pay creditors cents on the dollar. Preston did not go to prison, thanks to my mercy. But he faced his own kind of sentence. The Securities and Exchange Commission barred him from holding any financial officer position for life. Last I heard, he was working as a shift manager at a car rental agency near the airport. As for the estate, I did not live in it. I turned the Vanderbilt mansion into the corporate headquarters for T.S. Logistics. My dispatchers now sit in the ballroom where I was once told I did not belong. The dining room, where my father threw my check in the soup, is now the employee break room. 6 months ago, a letter arrived at my office. It was on expensive stationery, the kind my mother used to hoard. My dearest Tessa. It read, We are living in a small apartment now. Your father's health is failing. We realize we may have been too harsh. We are a family, and families forgive. Please, call us. We miss you. There was no apology. No admission of guilt. Just a hovering attempt to see if my wallet was open again. I did not burn it. That would be dramatic. I did not cry over it. That would be regression. I simply ran it through the office shredder. The noise of the paper tearing was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. I did not reply. Indifference is the only revenge that lasts. I did not build this new life alone. Mrs. Higgins is now the chief financial officer of T.S. Logistics. She earns double what my father ever paid her. And she has full medical benefits. Mr. Vance is a partner in the firm. And every Friday, we have a team dinner in the old dining room. We eat pizza on paper plates. We laugh loud enough to shake the crystal chandeliers I never took down. And nobody, not a single person, cares about image. I found out that family is not whose deoxyribonucleic acid you share. It is who stands next to you in the trenches when the bullets start flying. If you are listening to this, and you feel like the outsider in your own life, I need you to listen to me closely. I spent years trying to buy a seat at a table where I was never going to be welcome. I thought if I worked harder, if I gave more, if I just fixed one more problem for them, they would finally see me. They did not. And they never would have. Here is what I learned from buying my own father's debt. Rule number 1. The outsider advantage. Being the black sheep is painful, but it is also a superpower. While the golden children are being protected and pampered, you are learning how to survive. You are building calluses. You are learning the mechanics of the world, while they are just enjoying the view. When the storm comes, and it always comes, the castle collapses, but the shelter you built with your own hands will stand. Rule number 2. Respect the hands that feed you. My family fell because they despised the dirty work that actually paid for their lifestyle. They mocked the diesel, the sweat, the logistics. Never let arrogance blind you to the source of your comfort. The moment you think you are too good for the people who keep your lights on, you are already bankrupt. Rule number 3. Read the fine print. In business and in love, the devil is in the details. People will tell you they love you. They will tell you we are family. But their actions are the fine print. My father said he loved me, but the fine print said only when you are useful. Read the actions, not the words. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to take your labor, your love, and your money, and go where they are celebrated, not just tolerated. My name is Tessa. I was the delivery girl. Now, I own the route.